Hello friends. Have you ever met someone who seems like a bolt of lightning and a wild stallion at the same time? Someone who challenges the norms, dreams on an epic scale, and refuses to be boxed in. Then chances are, you've met an Aquarius born in the year of the horse. Now, imagine mixing the rebellious genius of Aquarius with the untamed energy of the horse in the Chinese zodiac. What do you get? A cosmic cocktail of contradiction and charisma. They're visionaries with wanderlust, independent yet magnetic, deep thinkers who also chase thrill. In short, they're the kind of people you don't forget. But what are they really like when it comes to love, business, friendship, and even their darker impulses? Let's break it down. Love, a heady mix of mystery and freedom. Romantic love for an Aquarius born in the year of the horse is less about flowers and fairy tales, and more about freedom, fascination, and fusion of minds. Their version of intimacy defies traditional expectations. It's not about merging into one or completing each other, it's about discovering two whole, evolving souls moving side by side in sync, sometimes far apart, sometimes impossibly close, always unpredictable. Love to them is an ecosystem, not a destination. It must breathe, move, and shift with time, or it dies. These people carry an electric, almost mythic aura when it comes to attraction. You don't date an Aquarius horse, you experience them. And just like a thunderstorm on the horizon, you can sense their emotional voltage before they even speak. They have a magnetic presence, part cerebral, part wild instinct. They're the ones you notice laughing freely at the edge of a party, eyes distant yet alive, already writing their next chapter in their minds. You approach them not because they're trying to be noticed, but because they've mastered the art of being utterly themselves. That authenticity? It's intoxicating. And here's the real twist. For all their wildness, they do want love. Desperately, even. But not just any kind. They need a love that feels like flight, not captivity. They're terrified of being misunderstood or trapped in a routine they didn't choose. Love must feel like movement, even if it means moving through hard times together. They will test a partner, often unconsciously, to see if that person can keep up, step back, or dance beside them without trying to rewrite the music. Their idea of romance isn't about building fences, it's about building trust, the kind that allows both people to run free and still come home to each other. Aquarius horses fall in love with originality. They're not drawn to predictable beauty or cookie-cutter charm. What seduces them is the unusual, the way someone thinks, the way they question the world, the spark in their soul that says, I've seen something different, and I want more. They're enamored by rebels with kind hearts, artists with purpose, and thinkers who dream out loud. Appearances might get their attention, but it's your worldview, your stories, and your sense of adventure that keep them coming back. A relationship with them is filled with contradictions. They'll ghost you for a weekend to hike a mountain alone, then call you from the summit just to hear your voice. They'll resist labels, yet surprise you with handmade love letters. They don't say, I love you, easily, but when they do, it's because they've wrestled with the fear of losing themselves and chosen, deliberately, to stay. Their love is earned, not offered casually. But once it's yours, it's transformative. Now, here's the caveat. Emotional neediness is the kiss of death. It's not that they don't want to support you, they do, but they recoil at the idea of becoming someone's emotional crutch. They value emotional resilience, not perfection. Vulnerability is welcome, drama is not. They crave mutual empowerment, not codependence. If you lean in too heavily without giving them room to breathe, they'll start pulling away before either of you understands why. Ironically, their fear of emotional confinement sometimes leads them to sabotage perfectly good relationships. They might disappear for a few days, become mysteriously distant, or dive headfirst into a new obsession, all in the name of preserving autonomy. But this isn't rejection, it's calibration. It's their way of testing the invisible threads that tie them to you. Are they flexible? Or are they chains? That's the challenge and the beauty of loving an Aquarius horse. You must love them without trying to own them. You must hold space, not hold on. Give them freedom, and they will astonish you with depth. Give them trust, and they'll give you moments of intimacy so real, it'll feel like the universe cracked open just for the two of you. Their version of romance is rarely about domestic bliss. Forget Sunday brunches and his and her bathrobes. Think night drives with no destination, barefoot dancing in the kitchen at 2 a.m., and spontaneous getaways booked on a whim. They express affection not in tradition, but in moments that make you feel alive. They don't want to grow old with you, they want to keep growing with you, period. In long-term love, they thrive with someone who evolves. If you reinvent yourself, pursue new passions, question old beliefs, they'll be right there, encouraging it, even joining in. But if you stagnate, grow overly dependent, or stop dreaming, they'll quietly detach. Not out of cruelty, but out of survival. They can't love from inside a box, not even one built with the best intentions. Yet when love aligns just right, when both partners embrace curiosity, embrace solitude, embrace the dance between closeness and space, something magical happens. The Aquarius horse becomes an unmatched romantic force. They'll challenge you to be more than you thought possible. They'll champion your dreams. They'll write poetry on your skin and constellations in your memory. And they'll do it all while asking nothing more than for you to be true, to yourself and to them. So, is it easy to love an Aquarius horse? Not even close. Is it worth it? Only if you're ready to fall in love with freedom itself. Sex. Where minds meet bodies. For Aquarius horses, sex is never just about bodies colliding, it's about minds aligning, energies syncing, and curiosity meeting chemistry. This isn't a zodiac pairing that treats intimacy like a transaction or a checklist. To them, sexual connection is a portal, a gateway to understanding, adventure, and mutual transformation. If it doesn't challenge their intellect or stimulate their soul, it won't last long, no matter how physically satisfying it might be. Mental foreplay is everything. Words, ideas, teasing glances that imply a secret joke or an unsaid thought. Those are the real turn-ons. They are seduced not by appearance alone, but by conversation. Talk to them about something unusual, something meaningful, or something they've never thought about, and suddenly, the spark is lit. For an Aquarius horse, the way you think is often far more erotic than what you wear. They take their time getting there, and it's not because they're shy. On the contrary, once they're engaged, fully, mentally and emotionally, their sexual energy is powerful, relentless, and deeply expressive. But they won't rush into bed with someone just because they're attracted. They crave a deeper, richer stimulation, a certain look in your eyes, a unique worldview, a challenge to their perspective. These things matter more to them than any obvious flirtation or textbook seduction. Once they do let someone in, though, everything changes. Their horse nature brings raw passion and intensity. There's a primal fire under their intellectual cool, and it can burn brightly. They're bold lovers, unafraid to explore, experiment, or push boundaries. Not for shock value, but because they see sexuality as an ever-evolving playground. And like all true explorers, they're as excited by the journey as they are by the destination. Aquarius energy adds unpredictability to their style. One night, they may crave tenderness and slow connection. The next, they might surprise you with boldness, humor, or an almost theatrical flair. They treat sex like a living art form, a language without words, a kind of cosmic jazz, where improvisation is everything. If you're open, curious, and able to embrace spontaneity, you're in for something unforgettable. But here's the catch: boredom is fatal. Predictable routines or mechanical patterns shut them down faster than any physical incompatibility. If sex becomes too structured or expected, their interest begins to flicker. It's not that they're incapable of long-term passion, far from it. But their minds need constant renewal, even in physical intimacy. New ideas, new settings, new emotional depths, all of it matters. They may also have an unspoken need for space within intimacy. That might sound contradictory, but it's part of their wiring. Even in moments of deep vulnerability, they need to feel like they still own their body and their choices. They need to know that connection is a choice they make freely, not something demanded or expected of them. Consent, respect, and autonomy are huge turn-ons. Control, pressure, or emotional games? Total shut-off. Emotionally, they may seem aloof at times, not because they're cold, but because they process desire differently. Feelings come in waves for them, often filtered through layers of thought. This doesn't mean they don't feel deeply, they absolutely do. But they often need time and space to understand those feelings before they can express them physically. And when they do, it's with complete honesty, no masks, no scripts, just raw, real presence. With the right partner, someone who gives them space to breathe and evolve, their sensuality becomes a lifelong dance. They'll remain curious, attentive, and completely present. They're the type who remembers your unique likes, your subtle reactions, and your secret cravings, not out of obligation, but because they're genuinely fascinated by who you are and how you change. Sex for them can be emotional, spiritual, intellectual, all at once. They crave transcendence, not just pleasure. A night with them can feel like a dream you never want to wake up from, filled with laughter, depth, and a sense of being completely seen. They may surprise you by pausing in the middle of passion to ask a philosophical question, or whisper something so poetic it makes you forget where you are. That's just who they are, always blending thought and feeling, body and spirit. They are also surprisingly generous. For all their craving for freedom and novelty, when they care about someone, they give their full attention. They listen, they adapt, they experiment, not just for themselves, but to see what delights you. They want you to feel surprised, understood, awakened. And when both partners are fully engaged, sex becomes a shared invention, a thing that's never the same twice, and never less than honest. Lastly, don't misread their desire for independence as emotional distance. If they choose to share themselves with you, to let you in, fully, it's not a casual choice. It's a signal that they see you as someone exceptional, someone worth opening up for. Their boundaries are there not to push people away, but to protect something sacred, the freedom to be authentic in every moment, including the most intimate ones. So if you're lucky enough to cross that line with an Aquarius horse, don't just come with desire, come with imagination. Come with questions, come with openness, and most of all, come without expectations. Because with them, sex isn't just about pleasure. It's about discovery, of themselves, of you, of what's possible when two wild, curious, fearless spirits meet, and decide to write their own rules. Marriage, the uncharted territory. For the Aquarius horse, marriage is not a fairy tale finale or a quiet ending to a romantic journey. It's a bold, unpredictable beginning. A lifelong commitment? Yes, but only if it's to growth, to freedom, to evolution. The concept of binding oneself to another person, forever, can feel suffocating unless that union makes room for change, reinvention, and personal sovereignty. In fact, traditional ideas of marriage, fixed roles, domestic routine, and emotional predictability, are more likely to repel them than attract them. They'll nod politely at tradition, but their hearts are already galloping elsewhere, towards something more expansive, more alive. These are individuals with a restless soul and a visionary mind. Their love story needs to move. It needs to expand, mutate, challenge, excite. A partner who expects the same person 5 years from now will be disappointed, not because the Aquarius horse grows cold, but because they simply won't be the same. They can't be. Their identity is in constant flux, and they need a marriage that allows, and even celebrates, that evolution. To them, marriage isn't about becoming one with someone. That phrase makes their skin crawl. The Aquarius part of them is fiercely individualistic, always asking, what makes me different? While the horse side resists any form of confinement. Together, these traits create a partner who values closeness but demands space, who craves deep connection but recoils from emotional dependency. Marriage, if it's going to work, must feel like a partnership between two sovereign beings. Not a merging, but a collaboration. The ideal spouse for an Aquarius horse is not someone who completes them, but someone who complements them, a fellow explorer, a co-dreamer, a best friend who understands that love doesn't mean clipping wings. The more freedom they feel, the more they will invest emotionally. Their devotion is real, fierce, and lasting, but only when it's chosen, not imposed. Give them room to be themselves, to chase new interests, to disappear for a while into their own thoughts, and they will always come back, wiser, more open, and even more devoted. Expect a marriage with them to be anything but conventional. They may question the institution itself, wondering aloud why society puts so much pressure on legal vows or traditional ceremonies. Some Aquarius horses might opt for a non-traditional union, something symbolic, personal, and unbound by government papers. Others may marry in name but redefine every rule of the relationship from scratch. They're not trying to be rebellious for rebellion's sake. they're just unwilling to live by rules they didn't write. Their vows, when they come, will be poetry, not promises of predictability. They will pledge truth, curiosity, reinvention. Not obedience, not permanence in the way others define it. Emotional honesty is the bedrock of any relationship with them. They don't do passive aggressiveness, guilt tripping, or silent treatments. If something's wrong, they want to talk about it, clearly, respectfully, and with the intention to grow. That's how they see marriage, not as a place to get comfortable, but as a place to be constantly refining the connection. Challenges don't scare them. What scares them is stagnation. The day-to-day domestic routine might grind their spirit down unless it's balanced with excitement, discovery, or intellectual stimulation. They need novelty, not necessarily in other partners, but in experience, dialogue, learning, life. They also demand equality in all things. Gender roles, emotional labor, decision-making, they want fairness, always. If they feel their role is pre-decided or if they're expected to behave a certain way because of tradition, resentment will simmer. Their ideal household is one where everyone contributes according to their strengths, where creativity is more important than compliance, and where both partners get to shine without stepping on each other's light. Despite their unconventional views, Aquarius horses can be incredibly loyal. But their loyalty is earned, not owed. They need to feel consistently inspired by their partner. If their spouse becomes complacent, overly controlling, or starts seeing them as tamed, the magic fades. They'll either quietly emotionally detach or, in more extreme cases, leave abruptly, propelled by the need to reclaim their independence. And yet, for all their high standards, when it works, it really works. A marriage with an Aquarius horse is like an ever-expanding universe, full of new constellations, late-night theories, wild dreams, and long stretches of companionable silence. They'll challenge you to be your most authentic self, to grow alongside them, and to never stop questioning. They'll introduce you to new ideas, new places, and new parts of yourself. They won't promise you forever, they'll promise you moment-by-moment presence, which is even rarer. Children? Possibly, but only if the idea comes from a place of shared purpose. Parenting, like everything else, must be a creative partnership. They won't do it by default, nor will they thrive under rigid parenting norms. Their children, if they choose to have them, will likely be raised with radical honesty, endless encouragement to be unique, and an unspoken rule: question everything. It's important to note, too, that the Aquarius horse doesn't fear solitude. They would rather be alone than in a marriage that feels limiting, dull, or misaligned. This self-sufficiency means they enter marriage by choice, not desperation. Their independence doesn't go away when the ring goes on, it intensifies. They'll still need solo time, solo projects, and solo escapes. A partner who takes that personally is in for a hard ride. But a partner who honors that need, they'll be loved like no one else. Their version of romance never dies, but it's always evolving. You might celebrate an anniversary by building a treehouse instead of going to a restaurant. You might have date nights that involve debating alien civilizations or sketching out joint business ideas. With them, love is not just about affection, it's about creation. Building, questioning, renewing, together. So, is marriage possible with an Aquarius horse? Absolutely, but only if it feels like freedom dressed in commitment. Only if it celebrates individuality rather than demanding sacrifice. Only if the love remains curious, never complacent. To be married to an Aquarius horse is to live in a relationship that's not bound by maps, because the two of you are busy drawing your own. Friendship, the wildfire of connection. Friendship with an Aquarius horse is not a slow-building garden of routine and niceties, it's a wildfire. Fast, fierce, electrifying. It ignites when you least expect it and leaves you forever changed. These are not the friends you meet for predictable coffee dates at the same cafe every Saturday. No, these are the ones who text you from the airport with an extra ticket and 2 words, "You in?" Their friendships are spontaneous, passionate, and often a little chaotic, but they are also deeply meaningful, especially for those who can match their rhythm. To understand the way Aquarius horses bond, you have to understand that they are allergic to superficiality. Small talk makes them itch. Pretending to care drains them. They crave authenticity, the kind that's messy and unfiltered and full of real questions. What do you believe in? What scares you? What do you want to change in the world? These are the kinds of conversations that light them up. They don't want to know what you're wearing, they want to know what keeps you awake at night and what you secretly hope is true about the universe. They're generous to a fault with people they care about. If you're in their circle, they'll champion your art, support your ideas, hype you up when you forget who you are. They'll show up when it matters, but not always in the ways you expect. They might not remember your birthday party, but they'll be the first to call when you're going through an existential crisis at 2 a.m. They might miss the baby shower, but they'll help you redesign your entire life plan over wine and wild ideas. Their friendship is less about formality and more about soul-level alignment. These individuals often befriend the misfits, the thinkers, the passionate outsiders who don't fit into neat social boxes. If you're trying too hard to impress them, they'll know. If you're performing instead of showing up honestly, they'll quietly detach. But if you bring your weird, your real, your rough edges, they'll love you for it. They're not interested in perfection. They're interested in truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then. They also tend to collect friendships from all walks of life. Don't be surprised if their best friends range from a tattooed street poet to a mild-mannered physicist to a nomadic chef. Aquarius horses are connectors across boundaries, social, cultural, ideological. They love a diverse crowd and thrive in spaces where big ideas, wild dreams, and honest differences collide. Their ideal friend group isn't uniform, it's alive with contrast and creativity. But here's where things get tricky. They can vanish. Disappear. Retreat into solitude without warning. It's not personal, it's essential. The Aquarius mind needs detachment to process, while the horse heart needs wide-open spaces to breathe. They often go through phases of isolation, where they pull back from everyone, even their closest friends, not out of coldness, but because they're recalibrating. They might be planning their next big move, working on a secret project, or simply craving silence after too much social noise. True friends of Aquarius horses learn not to take these vanishing acts as rejection. In fact, if you let them go quietly when they need to, without guilt or pressure, they'll come back stronger and more devoted. They respect the kind of friendship that allows room for absence. They thrive with people who trust the connection enough not to cling, who understand that silence doesn't equal disinterest. And when they come back, it's with stories, energy, wild inspiration. They'll drag you into their latest obsession, a new philosophy, a crazy idea for a group project, or an unexpected adventure you didn't know you needed. They bring vitality, unpredictability, and perspective. They remind you that life is too short to stay comfortable and too strange to stay still. They're also fantastic at emotional alchemy. Got a problem? They'll listen, ask one piercing question, and suddenly the whole thing looks different. They won't coddle you, but they will empower you. They have a talent for flipping pain into growth and helping you see your situation from an angle you never considered. That's their Aquarian intellect at work, always zooming out, reframing, seeing the pattern behind the mess. The horse in them makes them lively companions, funny, dynamic, full of stories and energy. But that same horse can also be blunt. They don't sugarcoat. If they think you're making excuses or playing small, they'll say so, not to hurt you, but to wake you up. Their loyalty includes a kind of loving accountability. If you want a friend who'll lie to make you feel better, look elsewhere. But if you want a friend who'll remind you of your power when you've forgotten it, they're exactly who you need. Don't expect long emotional speeches or daily check-ins. Expect spontaneity. Expect intensity. Expect random texts that say, "This song is so you," or "I just thought of a business you could run." Expect deep talks that leave you questioning everything, and then laughing about it. Expect a friendship that's less about stability and more about transformation. They will outgrow people who can't keep up. Not out of arrogance, but necessity. They evolve quickly, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and if their friends refuse to grow, refuse to change, refuse to think, the Aquarius horse will slowly drift away. Not with drama, just with quiet finality. Their energy is too dynamic to be wasted on static connections. But if you evolve too, if you meet them where they are, and let them meet you where you are, the friendship can become a lifelong force. A constant in motion, a touchstone that isn't about daily presence, but about realness, always. A wildfire, yes, but one that burns in all the best ways. So if you're lucky enough to be friends with an Aquarius horse, don't try to tame the flames. Let them burn. Feed them with ideas, honesty, and freedom. And watch how that fire lights up your world in ways you never imagined. Business. The innovator on a mission. When it comes to business, the Aquarius horse doesn't follow the manual, they rewrite it. These individuals are not content with climbing corporate ladders or maintaining the status quo. They're here to build something different, something bold, something that matters. Their ambition isn't linear, it's explosive, unpredictable, and deeply fueled by a personal sense of purpose. They're less, climb the ranks, and more, burn the old structure down and build something better. Conventional goals like promotions, titles, or corner offices rarely motivate them. They're visionaries, and their work ethic is powered by passion, not protocol. They come alive when they feel like their work is contributing to something larger than themselves. Impact, innovation, and meaning are the real currencies they trade in. Give them a cause they care about, a problem worth solving, or a frontier nobody's touched yet, and they'll throw themselves into it with fire and ferocity. But ask them to follow rigid corporate guidelines without room for creativity, and you'll watch their enthusiasm dissolve overnight. For them, business isn't about fitting in, it's about standing out, breaking molds, and bringing new ideas into the world. They're natural entrepreneurs, even if they don't start their own company right away. Their minds work like startup engines, fast, adaptive, and constantly iterating. They often have multiple projects brewing at once, and while not every idea sees the finish line, the sheer volume of thought and experimentation is staggering. They're not afraid to fail, in fact, they expect to. Failure, to them, is just feedback. Just part of the process. Their resilience is born not from discipline but from deep-rooted curiosity. They have to know what's possible. They have to find out what's around the next corner. In the workplace, they're both exhilarating and, at times, exasperating. They bring brilliance, creativity, and a visionary scope that can electrify a team, but they're also deeply resistant to micromanagement, routine, or bureaucracy. If you try to confine them with too many rules, they'll either shut down, revolt, or quietly start looking for the exit. They work best when given trust, autonomy, and space to experiment. Micromanaging an Aquarius horse is like trying to saddle a lightning bolt. It kills the very thing that makes them powerful. They gravitate toward work that allows for movement, mental, emotional, physical. This might mean remote work, travel-based roles, flexible hours, or project-based consulting. The more control they have over how and when they work, the more they thrive. Traditional 9-to-5 jobs with strict schedules or mind-numbing repetition will drain them quickly. They want to feel like what they're doing matters, and they want to do it on their terms. Their sweet spot is in innovation-heavy fields. Think tech startups, design, architecture, social entrepreneurship, branding, or anything involving problem-solving at scale. Many also find success in coaching, healing, or thought leadership, particularly when they're allowed to integrate their unique worldviews. They're not afraid to challenge norms or disrupt industries. In fact, they live for that. Money? It's a tool. Nothing more, nothing less. They appreciate financial freedom, but they're not obsessed with status symbols or wealth accumulation for its own sake. Flashy lifestyles and luxury brands usually don't impress them. What excites them is what money allows them to do: travel, create, experiment, or launch something world-changing. Their relationship with money is defined by independence. If they feel owned by it, trapped by debt, shackled to a job, stuck in survival mode, they'll either rebel or rapidly plot their escape. Financial planning isn't always their strong suit, but when their purpose aligns with profit, they can build empires without blinking. Leadership is another complex arena for them. They are magnetic, inspiring, and deeply persuasive when they believe in what they're doing. People follow them not because of rank, but because of vision. They lead by example, not by ego. But they're also not fond of traditional hierarchies. Titles, power plays, and office politics bore or offend them. They'd rather lead a small, passionate team of free thinkers than manage a large, stagnant organization. And while they can work on a team, they're rarely content being just another cog in the machine. They want their voice to matter. They want their fingerprints on the final product. One of their hidden talents is their ability to spot future trends. Their Aquarian mind is wired for the future. They instinctively sense where industries are headed, what ideas are gaining momentum, and which problems need solving before the rest of the world catches up. Combine that with the horse's fearless action-taking, and you've got someone who doesn't just predict the wave. They build the surfboard and ride it before anyone else realizes there's a swell coming. However, this visionary intensity can also lead to burnout. They tend to take on too much, too fast, with little regard for pacing themselves. Their enthusiasm burns bright, and sometimes burns out. Long-term focus is a skill they have to consciously develop. It's not uncommon for them to launch half a dozen projects in 1 year and only finish 2. But when they do follow through, their work can be revolutionary. Their biggest professional challenges often involve discipline, delegation, and patience. They don't always like being told what to do, but ironically, they also struggle with managing others who need structure. They can be impatient with people who think small, resist change, or take too long to grasp big ideas. But when they find collaborators who are self-sufficient, sharp, and just as curious, magic happens. They build things that push culture forward. At their best, Aquarius horses are business pioneers, rule breakers with purpose. They're not just here to succeed in existing systems, they're here to redefine what success even means. They believe that business should mean something, not just financially, but socially, emotionally, and intellectually. Whether they're launching a brand, consulting on a passion project, or building something no one else has imagined yet, they bring unmatched creativity and fire. So if you're hiring them, managing them, partnering with them, or trying to keep up with them, understand this: they're not in it for comfort. They're in it for revolution. Give them space, give them challenge, give them purpose, and then get out of their way. Because once they see the path, they don't walk it. They run. Dark sides. The storm within. Every strength casts a shadow, and for the Aquarius horse, those shadows run deep. Brilliant, magnetic, and independent as they may be, there's a tempest beneath the surface, one that they often wrestle with privately and with great intensity. These individuals can seem untouchable at times, aloof, distant, emotionally sealed, not because they lack feeling, but because they fear losing themselves to it. Independence is their armor, and when threatened, they'll retreat behind it without warning, leaving loved ones confused, hurt, and locked out. Their default mode is self-reliance. They've trained themselves to be the one who doesn't need anyone, not because they're cold, but because they equate need with vulnerability, and vulnerability with a potential loss of freedom. This makes emotional closeness a double-edged sword. On one hand, they crave depth and truth in their connections. On the other, when things get too intense, too emotionally messy, or too dependent, their first instinct is to pull away, fast. Their partners and friends may experience this as abandonment, but in the Aquarius horse's mind, it's self-preservation. They're trying to breathe in a moment where it feels like the walls are closing in. This detachment can easily be mistaken for indifference. In truth, they often do care deeply, but struggle to express it in ways others understand. Instead of offering reassurance, they may offer space. Instead of saying, "I'm here," they'll disappear for 3 days and come back acting like nothing happened. To them, silence is not always absence, but to others, it feels like a void. They are often misunderstood in this space between connection and solitude, and it's here that many of their relationships falter. Then there's their infamous inconsistency. Bursts of brilliance followed by stretches of ghosting. Projects ignited with wild enthusiasm only to be abandoned the minute the rush fades. Their minds are fast, faster than most, and because of that, they're easily bored, constantly distracted, always chasing the next idea. The problem isn't creativity, it's follow-through. What begins as a revolutionary vision often ends as a forgotten file on a desktop, sacrificed to the next obsession. This habit can create frustration, both in themselves and in those around them who depend on their execution. In team settings, this inconsistency shows up as unreliability. They'll inspire everyone, start a movement, get people excited, and then vanish mid-process. Not because they're lazy, but because the fire that got them started burned too hot and too fast. They need to learn discipline, pacing, and how to complete what they start, even when it stops being exciting. Without that, they risk being seen as flaky, even when their intentions were sincere. Their rebellious nature, one of their greatest strengths, can also be their Achilles heel. They're so allergic to control and conformity that they often reject authority just because it's authority. This can make them incredibly difficult to manage, lead, or advise. They resist direction, question every decision, and often assume they know better, which sometimes they do. But this defiance can backfire when pride overrides reason. They might ignore good advice, sabotage structure, or resist collaboration even when it's needed. The result? Self-imposed isolation disguised as independence. The worst version of this? A spiral into self-righteousness. If they feel misunderstood for too long, or rejected for being too different, they may retreat into a fortress of ego. From inside that fortress, they tell themselves no one gets it, no one can get it, because they're just too unique. That narrative can protect them temporarily, but it also keeps them stuck, unreachable, and alone. Over time, their fierce individuality can become a prison of their own making. This isolation feeds another dark trait, cynicism. Disillusioned with the world, frustrated by people's lack of vision, exhausted by failed relationships or misunderstood passions, the Aquarius horse can turn cold. Emotionally detached, intellectually arrogant, they may begin to see connection as futile, people as predictable, love as a trap. In this headspace, they stop trying. They stop showing up. They become loners not out of choice, but out of despair disguised as independence. Their inner storm also shows up as anxiety, not always in the obvious ways, but as a constant hum of restlessness. Even when life is going well, they often feel like they should be somewhere else, doing something else, becoming someone else. It's hard for them to feel satisfied. Contentment feels like stagnation. Success feels temporary. There's always another layer, another question, another leap to make. This inability to pause and appreciate the present moment can leave them constantly chasing meaning but never quite landing in it. They also struggle deeply with vulnerability. For all their openness and ideas, they are highly guarded when it comes to feelings. You can talk to them for hours and still feel like you don't really know them. They might share thoughts, dreams, and philosophies, but rarely the parts of themselves that are scared, ashamed, or hurting. Opening that door means risking control, risking exposure, and that's terrifying for them. Their pride and self-image are often built on being self-contained. To admit weakness feels like a betrayal of who they are. But here's the truth they must eventually face. Freedom without connection becomes emptiness. Independence without intimacy becomes exile. The walls they build to protect themselves from chaos also keep out joy. And no amount of innovation, intelligence, or autonomy can replace the warmth of being truly seen, flaws and all. Healing their dark side doesn't mean becoming less free, it means learning to trust within freedom. To stay when it's hard. To finish what they start. To open up, even when it feels risky. It means letting people in without losing themselves. That's their greatest challenge and their greatest opportunity. The Aquarius horse is not broken. But they are complicated. Their mind is lightning, their heart is wild, and their soul is learning that even the most electric storm needs a grounding wire, or it burns everything it touches. Life purpose. To redefine what's possible. Aquarius horses aren't here to color inside the lines, they're here to redraw the entire canvas. At their deepest level, their life purpose revolves around one word: transformation. Not just personal growth, but cultural, societal, and even global evolution. They were born to challenge the norms others accept as permanent, to see systems as malleable, and to spark ideas that didn't exist yesterday. To them, the world isn't something to fit into, it's something to reshape, reimagine, and revolutionize. They carry a blueprint inside them for a future that hasn't been built yet, and they spend their lives trying to decode it, piece by piece. They don't just want to exist, they want to matter. And not in the egoic, spotlight-hungry sense. Aquarius horses are often more interested in the impact they leave behind than the recognition they receive in the moment. Fame doesn't interest them unless it gives them the leverage to amplify their mission. Money, while useful, is never the final destination. Their fulfillment comes from creating something meaningful, a movement, an invention, an idea, a conversation, that shifts the way people think, feel, or live. This sense of mission is woven into everything they do. Even their hobbies tend to be steeped in purpose. They're not the kind to pursue activities purely for fun. Even their leisure often has a deeper layer. They'll learn a language not just to travel, but to connect with a new culture and understand global perspectives. They'll dive into coding not just to build an app, but to develop a platform that empowers underrepresented voices. That horse drive keeps them moving forward, while the Aquarian mind constantly asks, what's next? What if this could be better? What if we did it differently? Their life is often defined by reinvention. They're not afraid to start over. In fact, they need to start over, many times, in many ways. They may switch careers in their 30s, change cities on a whim, or abandon a project at the peak of its success because a new, more urgent calling has emerged. Others may see this as instability, but for the Aquarius horse, it's evolution. They don't cling to what's working if it's no longer growing. They live in cycles of creation, disruption, and rebirth, always becoming a truer version of themselves, even when the path is chaotic. They're also natural visionaries, the kind who often feel ahead of their time. This can be both a blessing and a burden. While they're dreaming of tomorrow, the world is still catching up to yesterday. It's easy for them to feel misunderstood, especially early in life, when peers are still focused on fitting in and following rules. But with time, and with the right outlets, they learn to embrace their difference as a gift. They have to, because it's that difference, that refusal to accept what's handed to them, that will eventually define their legacy. Their role isn't just to invent new things, it's to awaken new ways of thinking. Whether through art, conversation, leadership, or activism, Aquarius horses are born with the ability to challenge what others call truth. They often use unorthodox methods to deliver their message, too. One might disrupt an industry with a viral startup. Another might shift cultural conversations through a provocative film or controversial book. Another might quietly transform lives by building a school in a forgotten part of the world. The how doesn't matter. The impact does. They thrive when their work feels connected to a higher calling. Jobs are lifestyles that demand conformity, where the goal is to preserve, not progress, slowly erode their soul. Routine without meaning drains them. Structure without flexibility traps them. This is why many of them resist safe paths, even when those paths come with comfort and praise. If their life feels too predictable, too mapped out, they'll sabotage it just to feel alive again. They're not reckless, they're allergic to stagnation. Their true purpose often reveals itself in stages. In their youth, they may feel restless or rebellious, driven by a vague sense that something bigger awaits them. In adulthood, they begin to channel that energy into projects, movements, and ideas that stretch far beyond their own identity. By midlife, many Aquarius horses emerge as thought leaders, innovators, or cultural influencers, not because they chased popularity, but because the world finally caught up with the fire they've been carrying all along. Still, the road isn't easy. The price of vision is often isolation. They may struggle with feeling disconnected, like nobody fully gets what drives them. They can become frustrated with slow systems, closed minds, and fear-based resistance to change. If they don't find communities that nurture their growth, they may retreat into cynicism or apathy. That's why it's essential for them to seek out like-minded collaborators, even if those people live across oceans or exist only in books, forums, or long-distance Zoom calls. Even when they doubt themselves, and they will, there's always a part of them that knows they're meant for something more. It hums beneath the surface, louder in solitude, clearest in moments of flow, creativity, or rebellion. It's not ambition in the traditional sense. It's purpose, a deep sense that their life was designed to make a dent in the universe, however big or small. And the beauty of their purpose is that it doesn't follow a singular path. Some will build movements. Others will mentor quietly. Some will inspire through disruption. Others will heal through innovation. But all of them are driven by the same core instinct: create what's missing. Say what no one's saying. Do what others are afraid to do. So what is the life purpose of the Aquarius horse? It's to question, to challenge, to expand, to elevate, to awaken. It's to live authentically, create fearlessly, and love like no one owns them. It's to redefine what's possible, not just for themselves, but for everyone who dares to watch and follow. In summary, An Aquarius horse is not just a personality, they're a phenomenon. A force of nature. A living paradox that makes perfect sense only when you stop trying to define them. They're visionaries disguised as rebels, romantics hiding in wanderers' bodies, intellects driven by fire. These are not the people who quietly fit in. These are the ones who wake the world up, often unintentionally, simply by daring to live on their own terms. They are, by design, unrepeatable. Once you've met one, the space they occupy in your memory becomes permanent. They are walking revolutions, but not in the loud, ego-driven way. Their rebellion is subtler, more elegant, a constant questioning of norms, a refusal to settle, a hunger for what could be. They transform chaos into creativity like it's second nature, and their solitude is never loneliness, it's an engine. A recalibration chamber. A place where they go to become more of who they already are. The world may think they're strange or complicated, but the truth is, they're simply honest. They don't hide their contradictions. They are their contradictions. That's what makes them electric. Love them, and you'll never see the world the same way again. They'll break your patterns, invite you into unknown emotional landscapes, and show you beauty where you never thought to look. But loving them means letting go of control. It means accepting that you'll never own them, never fully predict them, and that's the gift. Their loyalty isn't won through rules or expectations. It's earned through trust, space, and mutual growth. Challenge their mind and respect their soul, and they will become your fiercest ally. But try to possess them, and they'll vanish, leaving only questions behind. They are not for the faint of heart. They are not easy, and they are not consistent in the way most people expect. They change. They evolve. They start over. They disrupt. But in doing so, they bring life. They awaken people from their routines. They inspire courage in those stuck in fear. They shake relationships, workplaces, and worldviews into motion. The reason they're unforgettable isn't just because they're different, it's because they remind you of your own potential to be different, too. So if you're lucky enough to have one of these cosmic firecrackers in your life, don't try to pin them down or make them make sense. Just keep up. Run beside them, not in front of them or behind them. Bring your full self to the connection, your ideas, your flaws, your evolution, and watch how they meet you there with raw, wild brilliance. Be honest. Be real. Be willing to let the rules burn. Because once an Aquarius horse gallops into your world, the road you thought you were on is gone. And what replaces it is bigger, bolder, and infinitely more alive. Nothing remains unchanged, not your thinking, not your routines, not your heart. They don't just enter your life. They detonate it, in the best possible way. And when the dust settles, you'll look around and realize, this isn't chaos. This is freedom.